Welcome back, my Amai moms. I want you to all know right now that you are doing better than you think you are. A lot of you are going through some very hard times, and I want you to know that you can do this. I brought my dear friend Aimee onto the podcast this week for you because you'd never know it, but she has and continued to suffer from multiple intense illnesses, all the while being an amazing mom of 5. So many of you right now are going through hard physical challenges and also mental and emotional challenges. And because of that, I want you to hear what Aimee has to tell you. Her advice and perspectives and encouragement are actually for all of us because at some point or another in motherhood, we'll all find ourselves sick, whether that's with the cold or the flu or sometimes much more painfully chronic illnesses. I hope you know that you are not alone in this journey. If any of you have advice on how to make it through such hard times as a mom, please share it with all of us. Please share what's worked for you and also things that haven't worked. I think it's just as valuable to learn from successes as it is to learn from failures. I hope that whatever you're going through, that this episode can be a source of encouragement to you on your motherhood journey. Let's meet Aimee. Aimee, thank you for coming tonight. We're super excited to be able to talk all about motherhood. And there's so many topics that we could talk about under the sun of motherhood that, it could be 3 weeks from now and we'd still be talking. So can you introduce us a little bit about you, how many children you have, and ages, just anything like that?
Okay, so I'm Aimee. We have 5 kids. My husband is Ryan, and our kids are 12, 10, 8, 7, and 3. So 2 boys, Ammon and Lincoln are our oldest boys, and then Reagan, Cynthia, and Charlotte, or Charlie as we call her.
Oh, fun. Okay, so when you first got married, tell me what your thoughts were on motherhood.
Well, I knew I always wanted to be a mom, but I was very intimidated by the idea. I always kind of felt underqualified. I had a wonderful mother who was so exceptional that it feels like a high bar to me. But I always knew I wanted to be a mom. I knew it was really important. I did not think it would happen as quickly as it did in our marriage. So I kind of felt I had a lot more time to prepare for motherhood than I did have. But I think I'm learning more and more that it doesn't matter how much time you have to prepare. You learn on the daily. It doesn't matter what you think you know. You
I feel
find
like
out
that
every
is
day.
so true. I know so many people that are like, wow, I just don't think I'm ready. I don't think I'm ready. I'm like, reality check. You'll never be ready enough. There's no amount of reading. There's no amount of seminars you can go to fully feel ready to become a mother. Yeah. And I think there's a beauty to that because we grow through motherhood. That's how it works, you know?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So tell me, before we launch into like you and your experience as a mother, can you tell me you just mentioned your example as your mom as a really strong example in your life of motherhood. Can you tell me a little bit about her example influencing you and your mindset on motherhood?
Yeah. I think my mom's example of constant diligence in the home while also being so successful in other areas is what made a huge impact on me. She was very present. She was always there and with us in the day-to-day grind, but was always furthering her knowledge. She never stopped learning. She was always reading. We used to tease her and say, put your book down to watch a movie with us. And she'd always sit down and somehow end up sliding a book under her lap, and she'd always have notes. And more often than not, it was the Ensign magazine or the scriptures or something. And she was always furthering her education, her knowledge. And to me, that was really inspiring because it felt like a lot of people maybe would put motherhood down as, that's it then. You're kind of consigning yourself to this life of motherhood. And
like you're boxed in somehow.
Right. And that there's no further progression for you as an individual. And that was absolutely made clear that is not the case.
That's not the case, that she could do anything. She could learn anything she wanted. Wow, that is so neat. And how you come from a family of how many?
There's 7 kids.
There's 7 kids.
Yeah.
Wow, that is so cool.
Fun.
That is so cool. And at some point, your mom did homeschool you guys, right? When you guys were living in different areas, is that right?
We moved around a lot. And so we were homeschooled on and off, depending on how long we'd live in the area or how we felt about the school district or what the child needed at the time. So I was homeschooled on and off from age maybe 7 or 8 and through high school.
Wow. And 7 kids. That's incredible. That's incredible. And all of your siblings are just so amazing. So amazing.
They're okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're fantastic.
That's so fun. So you get married and you want to have kids, but you're intimidated. What was that deciding factor where it was like, okay, like, right, I just look around society right now and there's people, I feel like that they're waiting for like the sign or the right time or whatever, and the wait and wait and wait and wait. And what do you feel like was your reason to be like, I want to get pregnant. I want to be a mom.
Yeah. Well, it was actually unexpected, I think, for us. You know, like most people, we kind of had our 3-year plan, right? We're going to finish some school, and I was going to start and finish some school because we got married really young. But the first year we were married, the summer we were married, we got married in May. And that summer, I was pregnant by accident, right? By a miracle chance. I hate saying accident. Initially very surprised and overwhelmed for a minute, and then I was overjoyed. And we ended up actually miscarrying that baby pretty early on. And when I told my husband and we were talking about it, we were talking about how shocked we were, about how sad we felt. We were both felt that sense of loss and were really sad. And I remember sitting on the couch and we were just talking about it, and I felt like, well, now I had to wait, and I was really disappointed. And the more we talked, the more we kind of felt like, well, why? What are we waiting for? Kind of what are these signs we're waiting for? Are we waiting for more money, or are we waiting for it to be done? What's more important than the feeling I had, you know, a few days ago when I found out? What's more important than this feeling between us now, this emotion, this connection we're feeling, and this loss and that desire? And we decided nothing's more important than it. So that's what started our journey in actually trying to start our family.
Wow. And that feeling, that choice is such a big choice.
Yeah.
And that's such a powerful change I believe in anybody, you know?
Oh yeah.
Talking just really briefly about miscarrying, I feel like there's so many people that focus obviously on the mom, but I feel like men have their heartstrings tried during that trial as well. How do you feel like that was? Like you mentioned, both of you guys felt sad.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit on Ryan's behalf on like him as a dad, like losing that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think there was a shift. We've had several miscarriages in our marriage, and I think that there's been a bit of a shift from that first one, and I know there was a sense of loss there, to after having had children and experiencing our lives with our kids, to pregnancy losses after that, where there is a bit more experience and connection with the children and that understanding. But the one thing that's always been very consistent, and that I can say for Ryan, is that his pain was twofold, and that it was losing a pregnancy, losing a child, but also I know he felt my pain. And there was a lot of that connection and hurt, and that I think, especially as a very, very young husband, not knowing how to make it better. There's nothing you can really do. And we all know this, you know, there's nothing much you can do or say in that time to make it better. But yeah, it's a sense of loss, but also, like I said, it was a real sense of connection for us and always has been.
Wow. That just goes to show that how strong your marriage is, because there's a lot of times where trials can either bring you closer together or they can divide you. Sure. And being able to choose to grow closer together because of that trial shows that you guys were, you know, just the commitment of your marriage, which I think is beautiful.
I chose well in my husband. I haven't done a lot of great things in my life, but I chose a good husband.
And that is so for important. Sure. It's so
He's
important.
a good man.
He is amazing. He is amazing. So, okay, so through your whole journey of motherhood, something that I've been wanting to ask you specifically is you have gone through immense physical trials. So many different things from the beginning through all of your children. I feel like there's a lot of moms out there that are silently suffering through so many different ailments out there. And some are seen and a lot of them are unseen. But I feel like you are just this example of not giving up on motherhood and being able to stay with it and stay with the hard, even though even though you yourself are just going through an incredibly hard time. And so I would just love to glean, like, I feel like I've been really blessed with a very healthy life. Like, my pregnancies are horrible, but that's like 8 months out of like the whole gig, you know, of like your whole life. But I do not know how women like you make it through. And I would love to have you share your experiences, share your learnings, share your encouragement to these moms that are truly struggling themselves, and how you can be a mom and be a good mom and show up as a good mom when you yourself are struggling so much.
So that's a big question. And thank you for those kind of things that you said.
So here, tell us your story.
There's a lot to get to. I'm like, where do you start? Let's see.
Yes, there's so many different ones. So.
Okay. So regarding pregnancies, I'll start there.
It can be anything. Okay. Anything of just being a mom and going through ailments as a mother.
Well, as you know, I have some physical ailments, right? So some have been consistent there for a long time. I congenital sucrose isomaltose deficiency disorder, which is a mouthful. Okay. So congenital meaning I've always had it. So that's kind of a digestive disorder. So I can't digest sugar, so I take a medication when I eat, which I just received the medication maybe 2 years ago. It's been about 2 years I've been using it, which is great.
And it has been a very, very long, hard process.
Yeah.
To now, but even up until the last 2 years, it's been just...
Yeah, it's kind of a weird one. So testing and figuring things out there was a bit tricky. And I have a liver disease, primary sclerosis and cholangitis. And so these have been about, 6 years-ish since the liver diagnosis. So prior to that, I was relatively healthy. I've always struggled with some health issues, even as a child, which never bothered me that much, inconvenience for sure, but never bothered me. But it is different when you become a mom.
Yes.
There's no sick days as a mom ever.
Yes.
Because at the very least, your mind is going a million miles an hour, even if you're in bed. If you actually take a sick day, you're still
right.
It's not a restful day. So in the last 6 or 7 years, it's been a bit of a transition, and I think a big lesson I'm learning is grace. It's grace for myself and for all the things that we feel we have to do perfectly. I think back to, a few years ago, I was pregnant with Charlotte and on bed rest, and my kids were little, and they tell this story about making peanut butter and goldfish cracker sandwiches with salt, and it used to just make me weep. I mean, truly, I would just cry, and I would feel so bad that they had this mom that was upstairs in bed sick, and they're trying to make their own lunch, and I would just cry and feel so sad. But I've been able to, little by little, and I'm still working on it, give a little grace and say, they're okay. We're okay. We made it out. Peanut butter and salt sandwiches later.
There you go.
Everyone's still okay. And so I think a big part of it is just giving yourself a lot of grace and realizing what really, really matters. It's not necessarily what they had for lunch, because I got a little better and I started making better lunches. Like they're
the
healthy lunches, ebbs and flows. Yes.
But they think how cool during that time that they were able to learn and be like, guess what? We've got to learn a certain amount of independence to be able to go through this as a family, So that's neat that they were like, we're going to make ourselves our own sandwich.
And you know what? I had, even though I couldn't eat it because of my other, illnesses, I had, for me, one of the most special experiences throughout that process was having my youngest daughter at the time bring me up a peanut butter and salt sandwich on a tray.
Oh,
I mean, they didn't just become independent, but they became, in a healthy way, codependent and worked for and with each other.
Yes,
it was really amazing to see how much they grew up, but not in a sad way. It wasn't like they'd lost their childhood. But they started serving each other and started, paying attention to things around them, putting away the library books. And it's the small things that I would like to think they would have learned anyways had I been there. But it's amazing to see that if we put trust in kids, they do a lot more than we think they're capable of.
Yes, and they are so capable if we give them those opportunities,
Or if we're forced to give them those opportunities.
Wow.
Either way, yeah.
Wow. So on a day-to-day basis, let's say I would say at your worst, when you're going through digestive issues, major liver concerns. I'm sure energy-wise you were wiped out. How did you make it through every day?
It was really ugly. If I'm being totally honest,
That's what we
really,
need to hear.
Really
That's
ugly.
what we need to hear.
A lot of tears. It's really ugly. I mean, it depends on the day, but if it's one of those really hard days where I'm, particularly in the mornings is when I feel the sickest, almost like a pregnancy, right? But it was hard to say, I'm going to get up and do X, Y, and Z. And so I would try to just focus on the next minute, right? Just the next minute,
like
and then the
very
next
next
minute
step.
was just get breakfast on the table. Like just get breakfast on the table and then move to the next thing. And again, a lot of grace. If that day turned into, if I had these plans and these arrangements made and told my kids we were going to do this, and that's a big thing, right? For moms with health issues is we're going to go do X, Y, and Z. And if you're feeling ill, you can't do those things. Right. And having to work with your children through disappointments and things like that, and not beating yourself up too much for it, but then making the best of that day. Wow. So the worst days looked like a lot of tears, really messy house, scary messy house at the end of the day.
I think moms right now, any mom out there needs to hear this loud and clear.
Really,
because
really
I think every mom, I feel like we look at somebody else and say, they have it put together. They have it figured out. They know what they're doing. And it's like, guess what? We don't.
Oh, yeah.
We are all trying to figure this out. We all have crazy days. And to hear that you go through hard times and it's okay.
Oh, yeah.
The house doesn't matter. The books don't matter. The toys don't matter. It doesn't matter. It all of those things on the edges, it doesn't matter. It's okay. Yeah. It's okay to have a crazy messy house, and it's okay to let yourself feel that emotion,
Oh, yeah.
And I bet that was just your experience specifically was not a short trial.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm so amazed that you had such true long suffering, that you went through such long suffering, and to be able to see you, I'm just inspired.
Oh,
I've always been inspired by you. Always.
Well, I think there's a difference between long suffering and really, because there's others who have much, much worse trials in this life. But I think motherhood is what gives me that, it is what fulfills me. It is what fills that cup. We hear that a lot now, right? Like, I've got to get this and this and to fill my cup. And it can be used in a very dangerously selfish way. Yes. But it was on those really bad days when I'd look around at the house at night and go, oh my gosh, I don't even know how I'm going to do tomorrow, that I would see then the tent that they made. And I would try anyways to reflect on some positive and the things that they'd done. And I think that motherhood saves us from at least a part of the loneliness that can happen in health trials, and that isolation that can happen. You never get to be isolated, right? They're always with you, and so they're just always there first thing in the morning. They're in your bed and you're just not isolated, and that is a blessing. I've always thought that is a blessing, that even in my trials, my times, long suffering can be made so much lighter because of them, because I'm with them.
Because you have them. Mm-hmm. Wow. That is beautiful. That is so, so beautiful. I remember you saying recently you read a book called Teaching from Rest. I personally haven't read it, but is there anything in that book that you would, if you can remember anything from the book, I know it was quite a while ago that you and I were talking about this, but anything in that book that would give moms advice for going through a similar trial to you, of just a physical trial that they're going through?
Yeah, I highly recommend that book and loved it. I would couple that book very closely with Simplicity Parenting. Another one that really emphasizes the okayness of just being okay, and just getting through the day, and how those moments that can feel just long and tiring and hard and frustrating can actually be the most beautiful moments ever. I mean, shortly after reading that book, I was having a rough day, a sick day, we call them, and feeling frustrated, and then kind of thought back on some of the passages I'd read and said, hey, Cynthia, bring me the laptop. And she brought me the laptop, and I pulled it open and found some online resource to start reading books to them. And it was kind of all I could do, but it felt a little better than putting on a movie or ignoring them or, finding some other source. It was a moment of teaching, just a story that gave me a little bit of rest and gave them a little bit of rest, but more importantly, built connection at the same time.
That connection. That's neat. And how it can be so simple, but something that they need so much of that one-on-one time with mom or dad and just reading,
Yeah, and they love it. I think sometimes we get carried away thinking our kids have to have so many activities in a day and so many extracurriculars and have to go. And since trying to find a better balance in that, trying being the key word, it's been interesting to watch how my kids have sought it out for themselves now, where even my 7-year-old will say big words like, I'm feeling overstimulated, or I'm feeling overwhelmed, and can I go read, or can we have a family day tomorrow? And she's really good at articulating that need for calm and for rest. And that's not a me thing. That's natural in all of us, I think.
Yes, but the fact that at her age, she's aware of that, where most kids are just, being push, and then we wonder why kids are melting down or having explosions or stressed or all these different, physical things that come out during that. And just to be able to simplify, I feel like is huge. And I don't feel like that is honored, I feel like, in our society. Right now, I feel like our society is the more you're doing, the better.
Oh, absolutely.
The more sports, the more curriculum, the more this, more. And we are just totally, in my opinion, over-programming our kids to the point of just constant stress. Like I just feel like constantly stressed in their life. You've been able to figure out how to simplify your internal world and yourself. And I feel like that had to come from you as an example, because your children are so good at self-regulating. And I've really admired that about your children, especially again in a day and age where children do not know how to self-regulate and it's not being taught far and wide. So how have you been able to teach that? And what are the benefits that you've seen from teaching that specific skill to your children?
Well, thank you. And this is actually a huge work in progress in our home.
I'm sure.
And I
but
feel
really,
like
your kids are like leagues above any other kids I've met.
They're great. They're great kids. I feel like maybe they've learned a lot of this actually truly from my negative example in this, in that I tend to be an extremist. This is something I've worked on, actively had to work on. It is not just a gift I've been given in life. I tend to say, oh man, that closet looks really disorganized. It's time to purge the entire house and rip every cabinet, everything is turned upside down. Truly ask my husband, because he'll always walk out and say, it's one of those days. I'm like, it's one of those days. And I'm like in my working clothes and everything goes out the window and dinner's not cooked for a week because I just get up to my elbows in it. And so I've been trying.
When you get to those weeks, woman, you can accomplish the world. It's like you give Amy, she turns into Atlas, like world's on her shoulders, and you can carry it. Like
it's usually at the expense of everything else in my life falling down through the cracks.
Man, you can pound. You can pound on those projects. I've been super impressed seeing you be able to do that.
So I have been trying, especially in the last couple of years, to take note of that. When am I feeling that extremist, all or nothing? When am I seeing things fall through the cracks? So I started this journey a few years ago to try to at least be cognizant of when this is happening, seeing if it's something that really has to happen all at once, all in the way I want it to, or if it's something that can go little by little. So let's say they haven't learned it from my example, but we have tried to study it and tried to look at the benefits. And it's been interesting to see what a blessing it really has been. I would say the very, very top for me has been the blessing of connection that we've been able to feel. Wow. We've had busier seasons where I'm just running to and from, and we still fall into that all the time because it just happens when you have multiple kids, even if all of them only choose one extracurricular.
Yes.
That's
You're still
5 days
bringing to this person, this person, yeah.
So we still have those times, but by far the best experiences have come on our quiet mornings and our quiet afternoons, or when we've accidentally forgotten to take so-and-so to something and we've said, oh, oops, and been okay with it and just stayed home and played some piano instead, or had just a moment to breathe. And it's the way they play with each other, the way they find a quiet corner to go read a book, that has meant the most, I think, to me. And it's been interesting to see their spirits develop in a very spiritual aspect, where I feel like we would be lacking that area if we are so busy, where they know things I'm surprised that they know from the Bible. I think, was that in our family study? It's not, but it's something that they had an extra 40 minutes in that morning, so they didn't feel rushed to get through their Bible study. It was just, they had the time. And so little things like that add up. They've added up for me, and it's been interesting to see the blessings in their individual lives and their individual character development, but also in the family unit, how they've played with each other and cared with each other more, and still fight like cats and dogs. But
yes, but I feel like your children, you truly have given your children the gift of imagination and creativity, and your kids don't have to be entertained. And that is an amazing, I feel like most women don't feel like that can be accomplished. And I feel like you've accomplished that, where you don't have to have a screen to entertain them. And they know that they can bring out board games and play together and create this and read this and make this. And I love that. Something that I've been inspired with you is that I feel like with my first daughter, I felt just this mounting pressure of like, if I'm not entertaining her, she's not going to be happy. And I just have to be there. I have to do something. And like, I still go into this like, okay, well, we have an hour, but what are we going to do? I'm thinking in my head, what are we going to fill the time with? Mm-hmm. And for you, it's like, let them have a childhood and let them come up with how they are going to create and imagine and play. And I think you being able to give that gift was probably very hard, but I feel like seeing your family and how in sync and harmonious they flow together, it's such a gift.
Thank you. And there are some growing pains. This is something, it like pains me a bit when I see a lot of, if I'm on Facebook and all the different mother things, right? And someone says, I don't know what to do. My child can't go an hour without the screen. And I think, I get that. Like I do. And everybody has their own story and everybody has their own hardship. But it's hard when I think it's just, there's not an easy way out.
Yes.
I think a lot of moms think, it's such an overwhelming thought to think, how do I move some of this out of our life?
Yes.
How do you tell your child, we're not doing soccer this year?
Yeah.
We just don't have the time for it. And if they say, well, we're not doing anything
We're not doing anything.
That's the point.
That's the point.
That's what's on the schedule. It's nothing.
It's actually
that's the point.
downtime.
Yes.
Childhood, being able to just be at home and not have to
and
go,
it can
go,
feel
go.
like you're robbing them, right? Like you were saying, it can feel like you're just going to take their happiness away. And how do you move from where if you're already in that go, 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 how do you move back from that? And it can feel super overwhelming. And to me, there's just no easy answer. It is just hard. And there's some real growing pains, but it's definitely, in our experience, it's been worth it. And I say our experience, I should say experiences, because like I say, we fall in and out of it, and there's always kind of regression. If my husband and I go on a couples trip, they watch a little more TV when someone comes to watch them or whatnot. It's interesting. We can feel immediately when we get home, all of a sudden they're asking to watch a movie. And I think, since when do we ask to watch it? They don't even usually ask. And so there's always going to be regressions and some growing pains with it. But it's always been worth it to me when we kind of work on it for a couple weeks, and then it feels, you get that piece back, and then it goes out the window for something else. But it's a work in progress, but it's been fun.
That is neat. That is really neat. And I think that if we all were able to simplify more as moms and as families and our kids, I feel like the Simplicity Parenting book talks a lot about this, that the stress, anxiety, depression, OCD, like they see this in children where when they don't have consistency and when they're maxed out with their schedule, and when, I even remember in the book, it was like, how many times do you tell your kid to hurry up? And I actually calculated it, and I was like, oh, ouch, because I didn't plan right, and I'm rushed out the door, and I'm like, come on, hurry up, get your shoes on, do this. And it's like, that's not beneficial to kids. And here we've just thrown them into our fast-paced work, life of just go. And that when these kids are feeling this, all of these these behaviors start showing up. And when you simplify, all of them start decreasing. And it's so interesting to see how he studied that. I just thought that was beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah, and I think something that's really important when we consider this is because each child's different and each schedule is different. Again, this idea of how do I do that? I think it's so important to remember that you are their mother. Like, you'll know how to do it. And like, I strongly believe that if it's something that you see value in and that you feel is right between you and your husband, or you and God, or the three of you preferably together, when you start taking those steps forward, it's important to recognize that we as mothers have the power to know what they need and to make it okay for them, and to take that, I don't know, that step of confidence and saying, we're going to do this. This is the year we drop this sport, or this is the year we start reading every night, or whatever it is, whatever facet of your life you're trying to shift or control to get more peace, whether it be to get more downtime or more connection, whatever it is. I find that when I turn to the internet or 5 parenting books in a week, because again, the extremist in me is like, we're going to do this. So then I'll start scouring all over the world for the answer, instead of remembering that I know them better than anyone in the world. I know myself and my own limitations better than anyone in the world besides my poor husband. And I know what works in our home, and I know what I can give, and I know what they can give. If I really take the time to work it out and make my own plan, it's usually right, rather than taking somebody else's plan and taking somebody else's online schedule. And while there's great resources out there, I think it's so important to remember that, you know, we're their mothers. We know, and we can figure out what's best for them and implement it if we are confident in that.
Yes. Wow. Words of wisdom right there. That was beautiful. So with your children specifically, I've noticed their ability to self-regulate. Can you tell me how you taught that, what they do to self-regulate, skills or tips or tricks, or like, how have you implemented that so successfully in your children?
Yeah, so it's interesting. It's a bit different for each of them, which is important. Again, if I were to just take online and say, this is what we're doing to calm down.
This is the blanket statement.
Yeah, it doesn't work for everybody, right? The common denominator is reading. And it's been interesting to actually study a bit more about reading and how it changes our brain and our bodies. And that's just statistics. Generally speaking, it's going to calm you down. Generally speaking, it relaxes you. And so reading is one of those that I'm like, yeah, you could probably safely push reading on anybody, right?
Yes.
And depending on the genre, right? But so reading is a huge one for them. When they're feeling overwhelmed, they read every night before they go to bed. They have their reading time. But it almost to a point where it's important for me to say, you know, we're not running from this problem, hiding in a book, come back out. But on the flip side, when they're having a hard day, when they're feeling dysregulated, and they use those words sometimes and say, I'm just, you know, when your kid's saying, I'm stressed, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, I'm feeling dysregulated, then I try not to say, you know, other than just, hey, do you want to talk about it and what's going on? A lot of times I'll say, I'm really sorry. You know, it's been a busy day.
That like first empathy, that's beautiful, where it's not like, well, you should be feeling this way, or have you tried this, or what are you going to do about this? It's like acknowledging the emotion and empathizing.
Yeah, and then not trying maybe so much to fix it. And in doing so has given them the opportunity to, even though it's been more frustrating maybe, to figure out what is it that makes them feel better. Sometimes, you know, like I said, reading's a big one, but I have a son who loves marble run, building stuff. And so if I say, I'm really sorry, that is frustrating. I'm sorry, it's been a really busy day. Yeah, I get that. And then kind of continue on my own way. It's been interesting to watch and see then what does he do. And he'll usually go find something to do with his hands, right? Whereas my older son, almost always will find a book. And my youngest daughter, 7-year-old daughter, almost always goes to art. And she'll cut a coloring book, and she'll cut a flower this big out, and something really small and detailed that would stress me out is what calms her down. So giving them the space to say, you know, give that empathy, supply what they need. If they need a book, or they need, you know, they can find it themselves hopefully, but you know, if they need
like
something,
have the environment
chance.
There.
Sure. But letting them figure it out on their own, I think, has been the best. My Reagan will almost always go to the garden, and she'll just go pick and eat a million tomatoes. Thankfully, they're a healthy food, right? Maybe
That's
stress
awesome.
eating isn't something I should encourage, but if it's healthy
Hey,
food.
a fresh garden
Right.
or a fresh garden, tomatoes, that's amazing.
But yeah, it's interesting to just, I think, again, they're stronger than we think. They're more capable than we think. Self-regulation is in all of us. It's really society and ourselves that put that out. And we say, well, if you're stressed, shouldn't you do something about it? Go fix what's bothering you instead of saying, take an hour, go rest and get your head in the right place.
Yes, it's like fix the internal before you fix the external.
Exactly.
Like calm the inside before, the inside out approach instead of the outside in.
Exactly.
If I can fix the world, then I'll feel better instead of I can, help myself. That is really interesting. That reminded me of a quote from the book Untethered Soul, and he says something along the lines of, he asks the question, what is the difference between a worldly person and a spiritual person? And I was like, I was thinking, to me, I really thought about it. I'm like, worldly, I see more of like, I don't know, materialistic or, stuff like that. But his answer was, a worldly person chooses to have the world to try to fix their problems, where a spiritual person knows that they and God can fix their problems. And I was like, that's so true. Like, we are the master of our fate. We are the keepers of our soul. Like, we are the ones in charge, and we can't just expect like the world to fix our problems, like something external to ourselves. Like, we can truly, internally fix those problems, which I love that.
Love that.
Teaching your kids.
I love that.
So neat. That is so neat. Okay, so every question that I've wanted to make sure that I ask every single mom that I'm lucky enough to be able to be in the presence of is, what encouragement specifically would you give moms that are out there right now, that are watching this, that are going through the hard, going through the fun, going through the ups and the downs? What encouragement would you give them?
Oh man, there's so many things that you can say. And one thing I think I hear a lot is, you're doing enough. And I back that message 100%, because I think every mother's usually trying her hardest and doing her best. And that's all we can do, right? And so, but something that's been on my mind lately is not necessarily just that I've done enough and that's enough, but really actually kind of the opposite, because it gives me a sense of purpose. And that is like, I can do this. I am supposed to do this. These are my children. This is, I think that in the day-to-day, no one knows them better than you. There's a reason you're with them. And regardless of your religious affiliations or lack of, there is an element of, you are supposed to be with these kids. And they love you. I think it's really, really encouraging for me when I think about all the times my kids have forgiven me for all the things that I've done, right? Like, they love you the way you are, and everything you're doing is enough. But also just remembering that, I don't know, what encourages like a marathon runner when they're injured is they know they can do it. They know they can do better, and they want to, because it feels good when you do good, right?
Right.
And so for me, it's encouraging for me when I tell myself, yeah, I've done a good job, pat on the back, but also I can do this. I can do better. I can do better tomorrow than I did today. I can say sorry to my kids when we get in the car and I've been yelling, hurry up, get your shoes on. I can turn around and say, guys, I'm sorry. That was not cool, right? I'm sorry. I can do better. And the more I tell myself that throughout the day, and the more I tell myself that every night, I can do tomorrow. I can do it because I want to, because I chose this and I love them. Then the more encouraged I feel.
Yes.
So
yes.
That's what I would say, is that you can do it. You are supposed to do it. You know how to do it. So
trust.
Get up and do it.
Trust, and you can do it. And man, if this is coming from you, I just feel like anyone, and you've shared such a small part of the true physical trials that you have been through in your life. So I'm just so inspired. Another thing that I wanted to ask you specifically is motherhood in general, I feel like is being under attack. And I want moms to feel valued in this huge pursuit of motherhood. Can you share with us your view on motherhood and why you feel like it's important, especially in this day and age?
Are you trying to make me cry?
Yeah.
I think like anything, like a good company, you start, you bootstrap, you network, you do your, lots of R&D, and you work and work and work and work. And then you start to see if it's not a great idea, if it's not a great fit, you'll see it pretty quickly, right? Like your customer acquisition cost is up here. There's something to be said for that.
Yes.
But on the flip side, if you have this idea and you start working with it, and all of a sudden things start kind of clicking and falling into place, and there's investors and all of this, you start feeling like, okay, this is it. This is working. It's good. That's how you know it's good. Motherhood for me is the same. If you're questioning the value of motherhood, well, if you're a mother questioning the value of motherhood, look around and pay attention. Look at your children. Look at what they can do. Look at what they're going to do in the world. And if it's good, first off, I hope it is, because we're all trying to be good mothers, right? But I think that for me, it's look at the fruit of the tree. Look at what's happening in families. And as the world pushes against it, look at our society. Just look from the outside in, just from a purely, analytical standpoint. We're able to see degradation of the family, degradation of motherhood, and connection with our children, time with our children. The more we push them out to different people to raise them, whether, different schools and activities and tutors and different things, the more we push them away, the deeper our society goes into different challenges. And there's a lot of challenges I could name off, right? But there's several we could probably think of. On the flip side, look at history and look at societies where there's a huge emphasis on motherhood and connection and children in the home with the mom, being around them, working together. There's studies on family work that have been done for years and years and years to show the benefits of family work on our communities and our societies. And so looking at it from an analytical societal viewpoint, it's just the fact that it's beneficial. It's always going to lower crime rates, right? I don't know all the statistics, but it does better things for our society. As far as personal fulfillment, it's my own experience that there's nothing that's been more personally fulfilling than those hours with them. And they're hard. And sometimes in the day-to-day, you look around and go, what did I do today, right? But I think that's when it's important to step back and say, what did I work on today? What did I start creating in my children today? What characteristics did I see them start to develop? And start paying attention to the little things, and you'll see the good, and you'll see the value that you're adding to their life, which can only in return add value to your life, like in any outside endeavor, any sort of goal or business or whatever you look at. That's kind of how we measure value. So why not measure value the same way in our homes, right? If we're feeling fulfilled and if we're seeing good going out, it's pretty, I'm very analytical. And so that's how I look at it. It's very easy to see. But aside from that, just the happiness and fulfillment that I have personally felt, I can say there is deep value in motherhood for us, but also it's not always about us. And it's time to start thinking about the value we can give to our children as we dedicate ourselves as mothers first and foremost to them, and what we can give instead of, well, what's the value for me?
And that is such a key in this world, because so many people it's the me game, me. It's whatever I want and whatever's going to make me happy, whatever's going to, serve me and what my needs are. And that's why I feel like motherhood is amazing, because it grows and stretches us in so many ways that nothing besides motherhood could do. No job, no external thing could test you in such a way that motherhood does. And it does make you a better person.
Absolutely.
To be able to go through that, through this sacrifice of true love for another person, Okay, so last question of the night. I want to ask you, where I feel like the world is so much like it's only a downgrade sacrifice. Yeah. That's all motherhood is. And it's not. It's so much more than that. So can you talk to that and say how you feel like motherhood has changed you as a person?
Oh boy. Last question, so like 4 hours.
I know.
Well, you think about any characteristic that you would like to have as a person. Kindness, being serviceable, being strong-willed, being in connection with like mind, body, spirit connection, confidence, all of these different characteristics. If you picked one out of a hat, I would say motherhood can strengthen it. Like any of them, right? My patience has been tried. We talk about the ones that are obvious. You know, your patience, your long suffering, your selflessness. These are the obvious ones, right? But I've never felt so confident as I have as a mother, where maybe speaking up for ourselves and feeling like we know what's best for ourselves isn't always easy to access for everyone. It wasn't for me. Right. But in protecting my children and understanding the world around me for my children, I've become more aware of the world, right? And I've become more confident. I've been more involved in civic issues or in community issues and things like that I've always wanted to have involvement in, right? So it's made me much more confident, much more involved. But also, I feel like a really big hypocrite if I teach my kids something without trying to implement it. So I talked to my kids a lot last year about goals and setting goals and different areas of goals to set. And I was feeling so guilty because I'm just the worst at setting goals. And I'd never run more than a mile in my life, ever. I don't know if I'd even run a mile. But when talking to my kids and saying, you need to exercise, you need to do this, you need to do that, and it put me on the spot. And I ended up signing up for a half marathon and deciding I'm going to run it. And this is something so outside of my comfort zone. But again, just any characteristic you're kind of pushing out on a day-to-day basis in your motherhood life, it comes back. Yes, it does. It absolutely comes back. And so in doing something so foreign to me, like running, which ironically, that was like the last time I ran, right? But I did it, right? And so it's this idea of, if I'm going to expect something of my children, I'm going to try to do it. So when I tell them, make your bed every morning, well, how many of us like actually really make our beds every morning? Is it just me that struggles with this? But how many of us really do all the things that we're
demanding or expecting of a child?
Yeah. Right, but without my children, it's almost like that level of accountability
and
is
progression
so incredible.
Be there, yeah,
absolutely not. And so I think about what would I look like as a person without my children, without this experience. If I took away the last 13 years and said, what would today look like? It makes me sad to think about the experiences that I would have lost out on and the knowledge that I would not have. I've never been a natural thirst for learning, read all night kind of person until I had kids. And I'd never been really able to think too far outside of myself until I had kids. And anything I think good about me has probably come in the last 13 years. Different relationships that I've worked on and improved, whether in family or friendships, came because I've developed a greater love and empathy and understanding of people through my kids. And so,
wow,
it's one of those pick an option out of a hat, and it challenges you in any way, but in a really positive way, just like any challenge.
Yes,
pushes you to do better.
I totally agree, and I feel like anything in life that's worth pursuing is hard. There's nothing that we really those things that you just want so badly. None of those come easy. None of them do. And so when I hear people, it's like, well, kids are so hard. And it's like, yeah, guess what? And a career is too. And this is too. And this is too. And this is too. And it's worth it. Yeah. And all of it is worth it. All that time, all that effort, all that sacrifice is all worth it. Mm-hmm. So, this has been a beautiful night. Beautiful night. Is there anything else that you want to share, that you want to say to these women watching?
No, I would just emphasize the need for all of us to recognize that we can do this, that if you're in the thick of it and you're struggling, it's feeling really, really hard. I'll share one last story. I remember showing up to church one day with all my kids. My husband was out of town, and they were all in there. I had 2 boys and 2 girls at the time, and the boys matched and the girls matched, and I was all put together, and we got there, early and sat down on the pew. And wow. I remember a miracle morning, and I remember that was one of the worst mornings of my entire life. I mean, truly, I had never felt so lonely and sad and overwhelmed. And I was at the deepest despair. And I remember standing up to leave, barely making through church without, just losing it and crying and just wanting to go home, just being angry and frustrated and so alone. And as I stood up to leave, I remember a woman came up to me and said, your kids are so cute, and you just always have it so together. I don't know how you do it. And she turned around and walked away. And I picked up, I had 2 babies at the time. I picked up my 2 babies and walked out the door and just bawled my way home. And I just remember feeling so alone and just feeling like I just don't know how to You know, is the only way to get some understanding to just fall apart in front of everyone. Like, you know, and
it's like they have no idea.
No idea.
They have no idea.
And that wasn't a sole morning, right? It wasn't the only morning that I have felt like that. I've had many challenging days like that. And I think we all have, where we just feel like, I can't do this anymore. I can't anymore. Right. And it can feel so isolating, so difficult. And so to the moms who may feel like that, I just feel like, yes, you can, because I did, and I'm nothing special. I think it's just about just get to the next morning, just get to the next day, look for the good things, and remember that you're supposed to be doing this and that you can do it. Stop telling yourself, I can't do this anymore.
That's such a natural thought process of, it's like, 100%. I can't do it, I'm overwhelmed, I can't do it. Yeah. So is that what you would tell, like, how did you get through those days? Was it telling yourself, like, I can?
I would love to say yes. It was a lot of saying I can't, and a lot of crying, and a lot of feeling like I've messed up my kids forever, and I've messed up everything, and really, really struggled with that self-degradation that I think we all do. But there is something at the very end of the day, and this is the really beautiful part about motherhood, that at the very, very, very end of the day, which is probably 2 or 3 in the morning, if you're like me after a good cry session, that says you have to, because you chose this and they need you. And that is the beautiful thing about motherhood. You know, we've talked a little bit about my health challenges, and, you know, I've gone through some, and some have been scarier than others. And when people have asked me, like, what did it scare you? I lost hearing. Was that scary? What happened? You know, and I remember feeling like, no, everything seems small when you put it next to the love you have for your kids. Everything feels small. So when you struggle with your kids and in motherhood, I think that's the hardest part, right? But at the end of the day, yeah, it's a lot of talking to yourself and saying, no, I can do this. I can do this. I'm supposed to do this. And then at the end of the day, you look to your kids and you remember how much you love them. And that will always push you to the next morning and to the next morning.
I love that. And to not judge ourselves on the standards that the world does. And I feel like something that I've personally struggled with for a long time is tying my value to my productivity, my value as a person to how much I can accomplish, because I love checklists and I love accomplishing things. And I've had a really hard time in that aspect of motherhood, because I want to get this and this and this and this and this done. And you can do that with projects, but you cannot do that with people. You cannot be efficient like that with people, because we're not meant to be like that. We're not run as businesses, we're run as humans. Like, and I love the quote, we are not human doers, we are human beings. Are we becoming something? It's not how much you do, it's how much different of a person you become in life. And I just remember this moment, my kids were sick, I was exhausted. My husband came home, like crying child. I did not look any different from the moment he left that morning. I was still in the same sweats, probably like more spit up or throw up or whatever that sickness was. And the house was an absolute disaster. And I remember my husband just coming home. He's like, how's your day? And I just like broke down, like, I didn't do anything. I didn't get anything done. I didn't even like put one dish from one side of the table to the next. Like, I did nothing. And I'll never forget this moment. It like makes me teared up. And he took me by my arms and he looked me straight in my eyes and he said, Aurora, you did the most important thing you could. You held our sick baby in your arms. And I was like, oh, I needed to hear that. I needed someone to look me in my eyes and tell me the value that I was giving. And that was truly being a loving mother. And that's all I needed to do that day.
I love that.
That was it. We need to remember that. We need to remember that we are building something long term. We are not sending an email and painting a painting. We are creating a soul and a character, and that takes years to develop, years. And so I feel like there's so many moms where it's like they just feel so unfulfilled in motherhood, and it's like you will feel that if you're looking at the short game. Mm-hmm. If you're looking at the long game, there's nothing else out there that you could create more beautiful than a child who is able to flourish and to love, you know. So
yeah. And what a power to be able to make that kind of influence on someone. I think in that moment, you know, holding a sick child, there's times in all of our lives where we just need someone to hold us. We just need someone to, like you just needed your husband to say, you're doing all right, you're doing great. And I think about how much value I place on that person or those words. And that happens every now and then as adults, right?
Yes.
Like we're all kind of brick walls and we struggle with vulnerability. And so every now and then when that slips, and every now and then when somebody says something like that to us, think about the influence that has on your day and that has on your life, and how much you think of that person, and then imagine that 24/7 for about 18 years, and how much power we have to put into our children,
to
and
be
into
that
relationship.
voice to them, to be that voice of encouragement and understanding and empathy to the child. Yeah, and they need that in this world where they're being bombarded on every side, that they're not pretty enough, they're not good enough, they're not smart enough, and they're not capable enough, and we have to be that voice for them. Because if we don't give it to them, like, who else will? And I want, as we wrap up, I want every woman that is watching this to know that no matter what they are going through, no matter the hard, the difficult, the pain, that they are doing the right thing. Just like you were doing the right thing. It's not that it was like, oh, this is just so hard, I'm going to give up. It's like, we can't, because this is the most important work that there is happening on the earth today. And you can do it. And anyone out there, I want them to hear loud and clear that they can do it. And that, I feel like, was your beautiful message of tonight.
Thank you.
So, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
It was fun.